So the groom comes out. He's coming with his procession to come get the bride. This is when the bride and her attendants, they're supposed to be listening for the trumpet, and they're supposed to be watching for the lights of the procession coming in the dark of night.
Mm-hmm.
So just like Jesus tells us, you need to watch and listen. President Nelson tells us to hear him.
Uh-huh.
We're supposed to be listening.
Yes.
Side note, the groom would dress as well and in special wedding garb, and he would wear white. They almost always wore white. Oftentimes, if the family could afford it, he would wear a crown of gold.
Mm-hmm.
Because on their wedding day, the bride and groom were considered to be
Kings
a king and a queen.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh.
And you think about temple terms now, right? He would also anoint himself with frankincense and myrrh. You want to smell good on your wedding day.
Mm-hmm.
Who else was anointed with frankincense and myrrh?
Mm-hmm.
Christ, right? That's what the three wise men brought. Why were they wise? That gets back to the wisdom stuff we can talk about another time.
Yeah.
But he was the bridegroom being anointed with this. So all the symbols are there of Christ being the bridegroom, of us being the bride, and this covenant relationship we have the opportunity to enter into. So you get this joyful procession coming. The friend of the groom runs ahead. He gives the bride about 30 minutes to prep. And she would then, once she saw him coming, she and her attendants would get their oil lamps, and they would go out and start their own procession to go meet up. And when you think about Christ says, draw near unto me and I will draw near unto you. It's this bride and groom coming closer and closer, drawing closer to each other in preparation for that wedding.
And all of this language, it's crazy how much of this language is tied up into this celebration,
right?
This ordinance.
Right. And it indicates how important weddings were to them, how important marriage was. And we've lost so much of it.
We stomp all over that as a society.
Yeah, we do. So once they met up, the groom and his guys would be carrying what was called an aperion. And, you've seen this kind of thing anciently where you got four guys and they have the poles running shoulder to shoulder and the platform on them.
Mm-hmm.
And they would lift the bride up onto that and carry her back to the home of the father for the wedding feast and ceremony. Mm-hmm. It's called the lifting up of the bride.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you can go through the scriptures and look at how many times Christ refers to, I will lift you up. So he would lift her up, and they would carry her to the home of the Father. And this is where the door would be closed and bolted shut. So those 5 unwise virgins that had to go try to buy oil in the middle of the night, they come back, and they knock on the door, let us in, let us in. Lord, Lord, have we not professed in thy name? And what does he tell him?
Ye never knew me, or I never knew you.
Right. Joseph Smith there's a JST on this one where he says, so one of the two, he says, ye never knew me, or I never knew you. In ancient times, the door was usually left open during the day. People could come and go, but at night you would bolt the door, and you got that big bolt that goes across, right? And so at night, once the wedding procession had all gone in, they would shut the door and bolt it. So the only way to know who was at the door was by their voice.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're not looking at each other. You can't see each other. It's by your voice, the recognition. Does the groom recognize your voice on the other side?
Yeah.
And if he does, he might let you in. But if he doesn't recognize your voice because you haven't interacted enough, you haven't conversed enough, your voice isn't familiar to him, or his isn't familiar to you.
Or you don't know the right things to say.
Or you don't know the right things to say.
When he asks you questions.
When he asks you questions to confirm your identity.
That is very familiar, the idea that there is a barrier between you and the bridegroom, the Lord.
Right.
And you don't see him. He presumably doesn't see you.
Right.
And the only thing, is... Can you answer these questions? And
right. Does he know your voice?
And do you have the other things?
Right. Do you have enough of a relationship with him that he would know you by your voice?
Wow.
It could even be, not only do you know the right questions and the right answers and things to say, but have you prayed to him enough that he knows your voice?
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really interesting when Elder Holland recently told us we should try to pray vocally as often as possible.
Yeah.
We need to exercise our voice, speak with our voice to the bridegroom.
Yep, that's how God created is through words being spoken.
Right.
So,
okay, so the door gets bolted shut. The 5 unwise virgins were left out, and they go into the wedding feast. And it's interesting that here, if you add in the parable of the king's wedding feast that he's throwing for his son, it says many were called, but few were chosen. And why were they not chosen? And the JST here explains, because they had not on the wedding garment. They had been invited about a year prior, right?
uh-huh.
And they'd accepted the invitation, but they either rejected the second invitation, didn't come, or they didn't put on the wedding garment that the king would have provided. And Elder Bednar in October 2022 conference gave a beautiful talk on this, and what it means to have that wedding garment, to be ready. So yeah, if the groom's father was a king or of wealthy means, he would often provide white wedding clothing for all the guests to wear. And so in that parable, you get this guest showing up to the king's feast. The king calls him friend, indicating that they know each other. Mm-hmm. This is someone who accepted the invitation prior, but he comes in and refuses to wear the white wedding clothes. Mm-hmm. And you can tell in the parable the king is hurt by this. This is a rejection of the king. This is a rejection of that invitation by a friend, by someone who had already accepted it and is now rejecting it. So it's interesting to look at that parable in the context of these wedding traditions, and what they really mean. In both cases, it says to throw that servant, or to throw the friend. Where do they send the friend? Jackson, you got it there?
Outer darkness.
Outer darkness. Okay.
Darkness.
Now think about this for a minute. A wedding that's happening at night, and all the wedding party goes in, the door's shut and bolted.
So this whole showing up, this all happens in one night where the actual wedding's happening. Yeah. Okay.
And then,
so it's just any night. This is so fun. Why don't we do this with our weddings? So any night during the season, they show up and the whole wedding happens that night.
Yeah. Which you imagine this would actually be pretty exciting stuff, right?
So fun.
Like,
well, what is
the
only
bride's
one
like, I don't know when he's going to come. I'm watching. Like, when's he going to show up? And the anticipation would be really fun. And then he comes and you have this whole processional through the town with, your oil lamps at night. Like, how cool is that? It'd be really cool.
Is only one person getting married a year? Like, this would be stressful to have like multiple friends getting.
Whole fall
I know if all your friends are getting married. Yeah, I don't know how that worked.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Okay, so that servant that shows up and refuses to wear the king's wedding garment, he gets cast out into outer darkness. And in our mind, we think, oh, that's like really bad, right? Uh-huh. Think about this in more terrestrial terms. Like, if you are having a wedding at night and you're not allowed to be in there and you get kicked out of the king's palace, where are you?
You're just out in the dark.
You're out in the dark,
yeah.
Right? Same thing with the 5 unwise virgins, right? Uh-huh. They get to that door that's bolted. They can't go into the wedding where all the lights are. They're stuck outside in the dark. That's the outer darkness.
Yeah, these parables make so much more sense now because it's nighttime. Everyone else is asleep except for the people that are invited to this wedding.
Right.
Then the only house in that village that's going to be filled with light and life, and there's feasting and everything going on, is that house. And so you get cast out and you're just like, I guess I gotta go back to my dark house.
Right.
Every single person, so everyone brings their own lamps to the wedding, and so it's everyone's lamps that light the wedding feast.
Well, right. And this is a topic that could go down another rabbit hole, but is where did they get the oil from? Mm-hmm. The wise virgins had the oil.
Wise virgin.
Yeah. Where did oil come from in ancient times? Where'd they get the oil?
From olives.
Olives, right? They pressed olives from the tree.
So the wise, okay.
So, do you see the connection here between wisdom and the tree and the oil? And the woman who's pouring the oil to anoint the bridegroom?
Mike's like, I have to rewrite my books. Just kidding.
By Mike being Dave.
Yeah, by Dave. Yeah, that's what I meant.
Okay.
That's a worse mess up than Luke 7.
Yeah.
That's a worse mess up than Luke 7, bro. Holy cow.
Yeah, so there's a reason why the wife or the woman pours the oil over the bridegroom, and you think about where she got the oil from. She got it from the tree of wisdom and of life. Okay.
Continue.
Okay. So
This is gonna be a long one. I'm so pumped though.
I'm sorry.
No.
Like I said, I've been studying this for like 20 years and off and on in between raising children, but there's so much to this and I feel like I'm just skimming over the surface. But okay, so everybody goes into the wedding feast, the door is shut, the celebration begins. And you can think about what the bride and groom must have been feeling like after such a long separation. I mean, my husband and I had a 6-month engagement. That felt like a really long time. Like this is long, right? So just the joy and the festivities. And so then they launch into a 7-day wedding feast, 7 being a significant number, but
it's 7-day wedding feast?
7-day wedding feast.
What does that even look like?
I would like to know.
Like a massive Super Bowl party for 7 days.
I think it's a little different from most LDS receptions, though.
And that's why you understand, like, keeping enough wine to be able to
exactly
keep that going.
Yeah.
Also, shame on people that don't have good food at their wedding reception. No.
Or they don't have a DJ. I will say that. Like,
Was there music?
It's a party.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, there's a
for sure. I
festival.
mean, they had music.
Bro.
Like, that whole procession, that the groom's procession as he comes to get his bride, that was music. They were beating drums. They were blowing trumpets. Like, it was a party.
If
it was
you don't
a party.
get a DJ at your wedding,
down for
repent.
what?
Okay, that's what I'm saying.
Make weddings.
I don't want to come and just stand in a line and say hi to you. I'll do that, but I need good food and I need a DJ.
Dude, we need to. Sorry, we are just going off here, but we need to make a shirt on When It's Apparel. Make weddings ancient again.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
That's amazing.
That could be sick.
Yeah, that would
Trademark.
Be awesome.
Don't
Yep.
steal it.
Okay. That's great. I need the T-shirt.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was a huge party. Just really joyous occasion. This was a huge celebration. And I feel like like you guys mentioned, we've kind of lost that in our culture, our modern culture, where it's like you show up, you do the wedding, you do the reception, and you leave. It's not this gathering of like the whole family's there and it's this 7-day celebration. I mean, it would be hard in our society now, but that's what they did. And when you read Revelation and it talks about this wedding feast, that's what it's talking about. It's not just this nice wedding metaphor. It is this joyous celebration with the bridegroom and this final union that has been long awaited. Understanding that opens up not only the book of Isaiah, but Revelation as well, when you see it in the wedding context. Yeah, so at this point, the bride and groom would share another cup of wine. They'd go under the huppah. Jews still do this today. And, you know, they drink the wine, they stomp on the glass to show nobody else can drink out of that glass. It's ours.
It's ours.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's one of the other cups of wine, right? Actually, there were 2 cups that they would drink then. And one was called the cup of salvation. I'll get to it, what the other cups were called. So at this point, by the time they're married, they've had 3 cups of wine.
Okay.
There's a 4th cup that's called the cup of wrath or the cup of bitterness or the cup of judgment. It's all those terms are used for it. What cup did Jesus say he drank?
The bitter cup.
Yeah. So it's even built into this ancient tradition that the bridegroom would drink the bitter cup so his bride would not have to.
Really?
So, yeah.
Actually.
You're not lying to us right now.
No, there were 4 cups that were supposed to be drunk. And in typical weddings, I don't think the groom would drink a bitter cup. It was just that there was
That's what it
supposed
was
to be a
called.
bitter cup. Who's going to drink it? The only one that we know of is the bridegroom of us all who drank the bitter cup.
Okay.
So
once
we would
again,
not have
that
to.
wedding
Yeah.
imagery. Holy cow.
Yeah, it's more of that wedding imagery. Okay, so then, and this would be kind of weird for us in our day, but then the bride and groom would go into the place he had prepared to consummate the marriage while everybody else is feasting and celebrating. For us, that'd be a little awkward, but that's how they
That's
did
all
it.
you're thinking about, like in your wedding night. You're just like, everyone leave. You know what I mean?
When's this party going to end?
Yeah.
But, and again, this would be really strange to us, but there's some powerful symbolism here that the bride and groom would go to consummate the marriage, and the bride would bring with her a piece of embroidered cloth, this white cloth that she would have embroidered, and then the consummation would happen there, and this was to prove her virginity. So there would need to be some blood on that cloth if she were a virgin bride.
I've heard this before.
If she comes out and there's no blood on the cloth and she's not a virgin, she can be stoned to death at that point. So you go from party
Crazy.
to, But this is the choice that Joseph, Mary's husband, had to make, because she was clearly not.
Because they were betrothed.
They were betrothed. And, it says espoused. That's what it means, that they were in that betrothal
espoused
period.
to be married.
Yeah,
Yes,
and
okay.
he hadn't seen her, and he knew he hadn't seen her because they had to stay apart for a year. So he knew it wasn't him, and she's pregnant.
That's why it's a public. That's why it was
That's
going to be a public display. Like, he couldn't hide it. He had to bear the burden of.
And it was up to him to decide if she would be stoned or what would happen with her. And he had every right to have her stoned. And he was the kind of man that was like, no, I'll just put her away privily. I'll give her the writ of divorcement. And he was a good enough man and cared enough about her that he wasn't going to do that.
Her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if you're not a virgin, if you go into that ceremony and you are not a virgin, the penalty is death, right?
Yeah.
So you think about what is the actual, if we are the bride and none of us are innocent, what's our penalty?
Death.
Death. So again, we need a redeemer who can pay that price. And the beautiful part about this is when Christ, the bridegroom, comes out of there with his bride, and the scriptures talk about this, she doesn't get stoned, right? She's celebrated. But we all know none of us were virgins going in there. We've all screwed up and done stuff wrong. Whose blood's on the cloth? Christ's. Yeah. He shed his blood for us.
Wow.
So
That's powerful imagery. And you're right. It sounds strange to our modern ears, but if you can just put that to the side and think
Right.
symbolically and what these symbols mean,
Right.
it's amazing.
Right. He's the bridegroom that shed his blood to cover our sins.
Oh, now I get it. Oh, I didn't it didn't make sense before. So like in this sort of scenario, he like goes in the back room where you're supposed to consummate your marriage.
He
You
puts
don't have
his
any
blood on the cloth.
He puts his blood on the cloth to come out and show, because the father, because
Right.
that's who they're
Right.
showing to.
Yes.
Is the father that she is a
This
virgin.
Right.
Wild.
And
That's
it-
kind of wild. Like, strange. But
It is strange, but the symbolism is amazing.
Right. He's literally covered our sins in his blood. He comes wearing a red robe covered in our blood. Right?
before this, I thought like, oh, this might draw some nice parallels or whatever, but this is it, dude. Like the symbolism is crazy.
I just
Yeah.
didn't know how much the marriage.
All encompassing.
Yeah. And think about it. In Revelation, it talks about when Christ returns. So it talks about that he will lift up his saints. They're lifted up. And I don't know how literal this is, but they're lifted up. They go to be with Christ, right? They're going into that wedding chamber. And when they come out, it talks about the saints are clothed in white linen and he is wearing red. So that's what this is talking about. When you think of what Jesus did for you.
That's why our robes are white, is because he's willing to wear the red robe.
Exactly.